My life is one that is based more or less in the ocean. Venturing into unknown waters, it's a really daunting task. If I was going to be performing my best as an athlete, I only wanted to be putting the best, cleanest food into my body.
Climbers and all athletes are driven to challenge themselves. Of all the things I carry into the mountains with me, I agonize over what food I bring the most. Having high quality food makes me climb better.
I run on trails a really long distance, sometimes 50 to 100 miles at one time. I've been an athlete for most of my life, so what I put into my body is really important to me, and I want to make sure that I'm not getting things that I wouldn't necessarily want to be consuming, so buying organic is really important.
You know, we craft energy food and drink for people to feed their adventures. And, you know, one of the things as we thought about it was organic is the space for us to make the biggest impact for the planet, for people, and for the farming communities. Today, less than 1% of the agricultural land worldwide is farmed organically. And that's a big opportunity for us to change that. One of the things I'm most excited about is that we are working with land-grant universities and spearheading a $10 million investment in organic plant breeding.
What we're doing is we are training students who understand plant breeding and understand organic plant breeding. And there's a lack of those people. The decisions plant breeders make now determine the future of agriculture. Most organic farmers really believe in the ethic of organic agriculture. Part of that ethic is having the entire supply chain be organic.
And so they're interested in buying organic seed. And in order to do that, the organic seed industry has to grow to support that need.
There's a significant portion of the organic community that really would like to adapt the crops to their farm. And so if we give them these varieties, they can then adapt it to the soil conditions, the environmental conditions, and even the conditions that their customers demand.
You see a shift towards more farmers being interested in maintaining their own seed, and the seed side of things is really growing.
We definitely live in a David and Goliath world. Corporations have pretty much taken over farming, and there's some perhaps nostalgia about getting back to some of the basic dynamics between the consumer and the grower. ALBA is a nonprofit community development corporation that is assisting primarily low-income, previously farm worker families who want to become independent family farmers growing organic produce.
Conventional farming, there is a huge amount of products that are deemed hazardous to the environment.
Farm workers are the folks on the front line of exposure to agricultural pesticides. The rough estimate is that there may be 10 or 20,000 acute poisonings per year among farm workers. We know that that's just the tip of the iceberg. One of the best solutions, of course, is doing agricultural practices that don't rely on the use of pesticides.
It's more an inviting environment for the family and for kids, and some of these farmers, they're able to bring their kids, and you wouldn't think of that in a conventional setting.
I like watermelon, grapes, and strawberries.
We're tapped into something that is primordial, if you will, that is otherwise being lost in our society, the opportunity to be a farmer when you're a born farmer. I mean, that's innate.
When you think about, as a food company, what's the one thing you could do that would make the biggest impact on the planet would be to start purchasing organic ingredients.
Well, we're in the processing plant, and our season is just getting started. Our company is a dried fig processing company. In 3 years, we will have 560 acres that are being organically farmed, which will represent about 60% of all of our acreage.
By farming organically and biodynamically, we can start to use practices that will be available to us for the next 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. When you use like Roundup, you'd only use it in an orchard for 10 years before the weeds start to become resistant to it.
We've been selling the Clif Bar since, probably the late 90s. They approached us in the early 2000s and said they wanted to switch to organic paste, and that's a big part of the reason that we are expanding our organic production. I had no idea that we would get to this point. It was kind of a leap of faith.
It was never about the fact of let's make this thing because we think people in 15 or 20 years are going to really want organic. This was all about doing the right thing. We went down that path back in 2002, and since that point, we've purchased over 600 million pounds of organic ingredients.
Clif Bar was at the very forefront of the organic movement. That had to have been, one of the most daunting, decisions and tasks to kind of break the status quo, to step into kind of that unknown, uncertainty, and prove to the world what's possible and leading by example. We all have an important choice as consumers and as athletes as to what we buy and what we eat.
I think people are starting to realize that food matters, and when they learn how to use real foods to eat, they can feel the difference.
Pushing for more organic production. It works, it makes sense, it's safer, and it really ultimately benefits everybody to not use the pesticides.
We feel like we're preserving something that's certainly part of our own American history and culture, and at the same time tapping into something that people want preserved.
I think the majority of organic farmers feel that what they're doing is good for the world and good for people and good for the land. That makes me feel good about what I do.
As we think about our business and we think about what success looks like, part of it is creating nutritious organic food for people to feed their adventures. But the other part of it is doing right by our communities where we live, work, and play. We're trying to leave the world a better place than we found it. My hope and our hope is that someday it's not a different way of doing farming, it's just the way of doing farming.